liftoff of Falcon 9.
Good morning from SpaceX headquarters here in Hawthorne, California. This morning's Falcon 9 launch is scheduled for 10:34 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 18:34 Universal Coordinated Time. Our launch window is just under 25 minutes long and closes at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm Lauren Lyons, a senior engineer in our Flight Reliability Department, and welcome to the webcast for the Spaceflight SSO-A SmallSat Express mission. For this mission, we are flying a record 64 satellites for our customer spaceflight. This is the largest number of payloads ever launched from a US-based rocket. This flight is also particularly exciting for SpaceX for another reason. We'll be flying this Falcon 9 booster for the third time. Now, this is the first time we've ever done this, which we'll talk more about later on in the webcast. Following the liftoff, we have two recovery attempts. First, we are attempting to land Falcon 9's first stage on our autonomous spaceport drone ship, Just Read the Instructions, which is situated in the ocean 50 kilometers away from the launch pad. The second recovery attempt will be to catch our payload fairing with a large net on our boat, Mr. Steven, as that fairing descends down over the Pacific Ocean after separating from the second stage. And if you've been following us closely, you know that we're still early in our fairing catching efforts, but maybe today will be the day that we net one for the first time. And finally, once Falcon 9 reaches its intended orbit, the 64 satellites will be released in 6 separate deployments, starting at around T+14 minutes and ending approximately 43 minutes after liftoff. Now, because all of the deployments take place over areas of the globe where we do not have ground station coverage, there will be no live video feed of the spacecraft deployments on today's webcasts. So we'll wrap it up right after shutdown of the second stage engine, approximately 10 minutes after launch. However, we will be posting updates on Twitter about the deployments, starting at when we regain ground station coverage around an hour later. Now let's take a look at Falcon 9 on pad Space Launch Complex 4 as we count down to liftoff.
Hi, I'm Kate Tice, and I'm a program reliability engineer here at SpaceX. We're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket at our West Coast launch site, Space Launch Complex 4 East, or SLIC 4 East at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is just a couple hours north of where I'm standing here at our headquarters in Los Angeles. Falcon 9 you see here is 70 meters tall, which is just over 21 stories high, and most notably, our first stage is covered in soot. As Lauren mentioned, this is the first time that SpaceX will be flying a Falcon 9 for the third time. So all of this that you see here is from not one, but 2 previous reentry missions. Multiple reuse is being supported by our Block 5 upgrades that we debuted earlier this year. Our Block 5 rockets are designed to be capable of 10 or more flights with no scheduled refurbishment. In fact, this stage that you see here previously supported the Bangabandhu 1 mission in May of this year, which was our first Block 5 flight, and that was then followed by the Miraputi mission that was this past August. With a successful launch this morning, this booster will have launched from each of SpaceX's 3 launch pads, SLIC 40 and Launch Complex 39A, which are our 2 pads at Cape Canaveral in Florida, and now SLIC 4 East at Vandenberg, which makes today's mission the very first SpaceX launch pad hat trick. So in our 17-foot in diameter fairing here, we have 64 satellites. As mentioned, this fairing we will be attempting to recover it today. Hopefully today we can actually manage to snag it. This attempt we will be aiming to catch it and recover the fairing in the supersized net that you see there on our recovery ship called Mr. Steven. That's currently stationed in place out in the Pacific Ocean in preparation for today's attempt. Now, we are early in our efforts to recover our fairings, and if today is not successful, we will continue to iterate until we get it right.
The Falcon 9 and spacecraft teams are currently working no issues as we count down to liftoff in just over 10 minutes. At T-1 hour, the satellites were transferred to internal power, meaning they were no longer drawing power from the ground. And Falcon 9 has been loading propellants since T-35 minutes. Our fuel, RP1, which is a rocket-grade kerosene, is now fully loaded on the second stage, and RP1 load on the first stage will close out 6 minutes before launch. Super chilled liquid oxygen, that's our fuel's oxidizer, is currently loading on both stages and will close out on stage 1 and stage 2 at T-3 minutes and 2 minutes, respectively. The next major activity, which is happening at T-7 minutes, is engine chill. This is when we open up the valves between the first stage propellant tanks and the 9 Merlin engines in order to chill in the turbopumps. We do this in order to make sure that when that full flow of super cold liquid oxygen hits them at liftoff, there is minimal temperature difference, which avoids thermal shock to the hardware. The white truss structure next to the rocket, known as the transporter erector, or sometimes called the TE or strongback, it not only transports Falcon 9 from the hangar to the pad and raises it from horizontal to vertical, but it also routes fluids, powers, and telemetry lines to Falcon 9 and to the payload. At about T-4.5 minutes, we will retract the TE away from the rocket slightly, providing clearance for Falcon 9 to lift off. Now, regarding liftoff conditions, the range is currently green for launch, and we are tracking no weather constraints going into T0. The last weather balloon or wind balloon was released some time ago, and the upper altitude winds and ground winds are currently within loads limits.
Today's mission is for our customer, Spaceflight. With 64 payloads being sent to space, Spaceflight SSO-A SmallSat Express is an exciting mission. These include 15 microsats and 49 CubeSats from both commercial and government entities from a total of 17 countries. This morning's mission will be headed to Sun-synchronous low Earth orbit, which is what SSO stands for in the mission name. Sun-synchronous orbits travel over the Earth's poles as the planet rotates underneath, with the satellite passing over a particular section of the Earth at the same time each day. Sun-synchronous orbits provide a constant amount of sunlight, which makes them especially good for imaging satellites, of which there are several on today's flight. Let's check out this clip from Spaceflight with more info about today's payloads.
At Spaceflight, our mission is to make space accessible to all. We provide the most opportunities as anyone on the planet for small sats to get to orbit. The rideshare model makes space really accessible to everyone. This model lowers the barriers to entry for people that want to get small sats on orbit. And this enables all kinds of new business plans to come to fruition by really enabling lower cost launch for everyone. The SSO-A mission was all about getting small sats on orbit. They've historically been relegated to the secondary payloads. We decided to fill a whole Falcon 9 with small sats, making it cost effective and therefore enabling new technologies, taking an unprecedented number of first-time flyers up. We've got startups, ongoing businesses, space agencies, museums, universities, even a middle school aboard. Missions themselves vary from tech demonstrators to Earth observation, communications to biological experiments. Spacecraft come from 17 different countries, represent the work of thousands of people. A mission this size with 64 spacecraft takes years of planning and draws on our deep expertise in launch. Our engineers designed 2 rings, the upper and lower free flyers, that will separate and deploy their spacecraft in a series of orchestrated maneuvers. Because we have launched over 140 satellites to date, we've experience with nearly every different SEP system and dispenser and are always ready with custom solutions to deployment problems. Our engineers and mission managers were fully up to the challenge of a dedicated mission. Assembling the integrated stack was like putting together a giant, complex puzzle. It was a master effort in project planning, ingenuity, and perseverance that took place in our new state-of-the-art integration facility in Auburn, Washington. Our team also worked with our customers to navigate all the regulatory, licensing, and insurance challenges that come with putting a spacecraft on orbit. Particularly for our first-time flyers, making sure that everything is running smoothly is part of the turnkey service our mission managers provide. Finally, I'd like to say this would not have been possible without SpaceX and the incredible capabilities of the Falcon 9. We all envision a world where small sats are really making a difference. All kinds of applications, Earth observation, new lunar missions, space manufacturing, stuff we can't even dream about. We really want to say how grateful we are to Planet for being the primary on this mission, for SpaceX for enabling it to happen, and for all of our customers that are sharing this ride with us.
As we mentioned, there are 64 satellites on board today. One of these payloads is part of a collaboration between the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, or LACMA, and artist Tavares Strachan called Enoch. Enoch highlights the story of Robert Henry Lawrence Jr., the first African-American astronaut. Lawrence passed away in 1967 in an airplane accident during astronaut training, and he was never able to realize his dream of going to space. The artist sought to honor this legacy by creating a 24-karat gold canopic jar, which is the same shape of jars used in ancient Egyptian mummifications. The jar has been mounted with Lawrence's bust on its top, as you can see there. The Enoch sculpture will be sent to orbit, and once in space, it will circle the Earth for 7 years before deorbiting. SpaceX is a founding sponsor of LACMA's Art and Technology Lab, which sponsored the development of this project. We're now heading into the final countdown, so let's get a status update on the rocket.
With just a few minutes to go before liftoff, everything is looking good on Falcon 9. Fuel is fully loaded on both stages, and LOX is getting there as well. At T-minus 1.5 minutes, we will start vehicle gas closeouts. That's completion of all helium and nitrogen gas loading and the closing of all the valves to those systems. Around that time, you'll also see a large cloud of white gas coming out of the TE. This is expected. This is us venting out the liquid oxygen lines on the TE into the air, making sure that excess oxidizer isn't in the path of Falcon 9's plume at liftoff. At T-minus 1 minute, Falcon 9 will go into startup. You'll hear that on the countdown net. This is when the vehicle stops listening to requests from the ground, other than an abort, of course, and instead is controlled by the flight computer from then on through launch. Now, as a reminder, if anyone calls a hold on the launch today, we will try again at a later date. Falcon 9 and the payload are currently tracking no issues. The weather is go, the winds are go, and the range is green for an on-time launch today. Now, with 3 minutes to go, let's listen in on the countdown nets.
And back igniter purge has started. Stage 1 lock slow and it's closed out. Stage 2 lock slow is closed out. Falcon 9 is in startup. Stage 2 is pressing for flight.
Let's launch Drifter on countdown 1. We are go for launch.
Gas closeouts are complete. Stage 1 pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off of the Falcon 9.
nominal.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower and is now headed upward on its mission to sun-synchronous low Earth orbit. Coming up, the rocket will throttle down for max Q, which
reach maximum aerodynamic pressure,
which represents the maximum aerodynamic stress on the rocket. We're now headed into a series of events that will occur in rapid succession. That's MECO, stage separation, and SES-1, or second engine start 1. MECO is the shutdown of all 9 first stage engines in preparation for stage separation, where stage 2 separates from stage 1, and SES-1 is the ignition of the second stage engine.
MVAC chill has begun.
Following SES-1, we will turn our attention back to the returning first stage, which will relight 3 of its engines in a boost back burn to head back towards the drone ship. And then finally, we'll see fairing deployment at T+2 minutes and 43 seconds. As mentioned earlier in this webcast, we're attempting to recover the payload fairing, and while we will not have a live video feed of this attempt, we'll share updates as they become available. So in about 20 seconds, you'll hear the call out from MECO. Let's listen in.
We have MECO.
And as you just saw, we had a successful main engine cutoff, stage separation, as well as ignition of that second stage engine. And there goes that fairing. And there you can see all 64 of those satellites on stage 2 headed to sun-synchronous orbit. You will hear the call out for the boost back burn ending in a couple of seconds. That's where stage 1's burn that brings it back in the direction of the drone ship. That burn will cease.
Stage 2 trajectory nominal.
And we are hearing that the stage 2 trajectory is nominal and performing as desired. You can see those beautiful grid fins popping up on the left side on stage 1 as it makes its way back down to the drone ship. MVAC-D's power is nominal. That burn is looking very good. Stage 2, MVAC-D engine continues to look good. Temperatures and chamber pressures remain nominal. And we have beautiful views of the Earth from both stages.
So just a quick recap in case if you have just joined us. We just had a beautiful liftoff from Vandenberg Air Force Base, our West Coast launch site in California, followed by amazing footage of stage separation, main engine cutoff first, then stage S separation. And we see the second engine there ignited and carrying our payloads into the proper orbit. Now on the left side of your screen there, you see our first stage, which is coming back down to planet Earth as we're hoping to land it on our drone ship this morning. So coming up in just a few seconds, we'll be initiating the reentry burn. This is designed to slow the rocket down as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere. Then just a couple minutes later, we'll perform the final burn, also known as the landing burn, and that will decelerate the vehicle to a gentle landing atop of our drone ship. So there's the visual confirmation of that re-entry burn. This will last for another 10 seconds. Okay, so now that re-entry burn has ended, we have less than a minute until that third and final landing burn will happen, followed by touchdown.
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Now, as we approach our first stage landing, I'd like to point out that we might lose video coverage out there on our drone ship. There's lots of vibrations as the rocket is coming down towards it, so we might lose our satellite signal. If this is the case, we'll be sure to provide you status updates on that first stage as they become available. We're certainly excited to hear about it here in Hawthorne and across all of SpaceX, as this is the first time that we are trying to land this for a third time. So there we can see that final landing burn happening. We'll be looking for deployment of the landing legs here momentarily. Falcon 9 has touched down for the third time. So as you saw in that shot, Falcon 9 landed on our drone ship. Just read the instructions, which is currently out in the Pacific Ocean.
That's so great. And the second stage is still continuing on with the primary mission, though. We are 8 minutes and 32 seconds into flight, and the second stage is still burning nominally. It's on a really good trajectory. Power is looking good, chamber pressures are good, and we're looking at 200,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space with that engine. So the second engine cutoff, or SSO-A, that's where we're going to stop burning this engine, because ideally Falcon 9 will be in its intended deployment orbit. That's coming up in about 50 seconds.
So as we mentioned earlier, we won't be able to show the deployments of the satellites today, because this will be happening, that will be taking place over areas where we don't have ground station coverage. So unfortunately, we won't have any live video feed to provide. Because deployment won't be viewable, we will end our live webcast soon after the second engine cutoff, but please continue to follow along on SpaceX Twitter updates for payload deployment as they become available.
All right, we should be expecting SSO-A, and there it is. Let's listen in for whether or not the orbit's good. And we have confirmation that stage 2 has reached a good orbit. This is the deployment orbit, and the next step over the course of the next 40 minutes or so is to separate the payloads from the second stage of Falcon 9. And with that, we have reached the conclusion of our webcast today. Please continue to follow on SpaceX Twitter for real-time updates on the rest of this mission, including deployment of the satellites on board today. Thank you to our customer Spaceflight for entrusting us with today's launch, and to the United States Air Force's 30th Space Wing for range support. And a special thanks to the FCC, the NTIA, and NASA Spectrum Office for helping making today's flight possible.
Be sure to continue to follow along with future SpaceX milestones. Check out our website and social media feeds. Also, be sure to check us out for our next flight, CRS-16, a NASA cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. And that's currently targeted for tomorrow, December 4th, at 1:38 p.m. Eastern out of Cape Canaveral, Florida. And with that, from all of us here at SpaceX, have a great day.